I'd like to call this meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission to order. And would you please call the roll, Ms. Behrman?
Sure thing. Okay, Margaret Clements.
Here.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Here.
Bernie Garatas,
Here.
Jeff McKim,
Here.
and Dee Owens.
Here.
You are virtual and camera on.
Okay,
We
And
have Jerry Pittsford,
Here.
Jim Stainbrook,
Here.
virtual, camera on. Julie Thomas will be late. And Amy Thompson also will be late. And Susan Sandberg, city representative, is not here this evening.
okay. Thank you, Ms. Behrman. Would you please introduce the evidence?
Sure. Okay, I would like to introduce the following items into evidence. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move we accept the evidence as introduced. Second.
Okay, I will call the roll. All right, Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Garatas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
and Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, and before we move to approve the agenda, there's an item that we would like to add to the agenda as administrative business, and this pertains to joint representation involving a legal case that we would like to join with Barnes and Thornburg for representation. So if my colleagues on the Plan Commission would be so kind as to amend the agenda to include this item under administrative business.
I move that the agenda be amended to include under administrative business, item number 2, consideration of joining with other county agencies using Barnes and Thornburg as legal representation in a current lawsuit involving several entities of the county.
Second.
Okay, could you please call the roll?
Yeah, and also just note that we do have a continued petition.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I would like to advise everyone in the room that if you're here for the O'Bannon Type E administrative subdivision waiver of right of way of dedication, which involves a property at 6597 and 6601 North Maple Grove Road, that will not be heard tonight, and you could leave, because that will not be discussed tonight. And there's one other item that was withdrawn by the petitioner, and that has to do with Southern Meadows subdivision, phase 2 to 6 preliminary plat extension. And this involves a development on South College Drive, between South Rogers Street and South College Drive. If you're here for that case, you may not wish to stay. It involves Southern Meadows. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for coming. And that was withdrawn by the petitioner. So with these items and the changes to the agenda, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Moved.
The agenda as amended.
Second.
Please call the roll.
All right, this is a motion to adopt the amended agenda. Bernie Garatas.
Yes.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford.
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
And I will note that Amy Thompson has arrived. Amy,
Okay.
Margaret
Yes,
Clements,
yes.
and Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 8-0.
Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight is under administrative business, and that's SIA 22-6. And this is the Mesca Storms Minor Subdivision Performance Bond Release. And Mr. Myers, if you would please present the case.
Thank you. All right. Oh, looks like this one got covered up a little bit, being converted to a PowerPoint. So that's all right. This one is the SIA 21-6 Mesca Storms Minor Subdivision. It's a subdivision improvement agreement. Essentially, the petitioner has applied to release the full performance bond amount that corresponds to the required construction of a cul-de-sac off of South Omaha Crossing Drive, which was part of the subdivision process. The next step is for the petitioner to apply to have the road accepted into the county inventory. The ordinance states that a 2-year maintenance bond is required after the construction has been completed to the specifications laid out in the approved construction plans. One item to note is that the petitioner would like the cul-de-sac to not be included in the county inventory and not have to post the 10% maintenance bond as well. So overall, basically the planning staff is recommending release of the performance bond with the condition that all requirements under the stormwater report must first be met. Those conditions have been met. We can see here on the screen a comment from the stormwater inspector. They performed an inspection today and determined that their comments had been addressed appropriately. If you'll note in your packet, there's several items that are required for the release or reduction of performance bonds and financial guarantee from Chapter 858-8. And you'll note that each of those items that has reference to specific exhibits in the packet that clarify that those conditions or those requirements have been met. So right now I'll take any questions.
Do members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Myers?
I have just one,
Yes, Mr. Enright.
with the a roundabout not being dedicated to the county's inventory, with the roundabout not being dedicated to the county's inventory. Is there someone from Highway that would like to speak to that? I guess I'm curious what their position is on this.
I believe it's a cul-de-sac.
Cul-de-sac, right?
Yeah.
On Covasac, right? Yeah, like I understand that the developer petitioner doesn't want to invest that 10% in the maintenance fund. But does the highway department have a different position on this?
I see that Lisa Ridge and Paul are on the call. I'm not sure if either of them want to speak on to that.
Are they on Zoom?
Yes.
So as we're waiting, if the highway has a different position and they would like this to be included in their inventory, I would be supportive of that. So I'm just trying to understand their position.
And I think we've done the inspections and we support it.
Thank you, Ms. Ridge. Okay, do you have any other questions, Mr. McKim?
Is there any reason why we wouldn't want to release the performance bond?
Since all of the requirements of Chapter 858-8 are satisfactory, planning staff recommends releasing the performance bond of the full amount. There was some conversation with the legal department about the maintenance bond, whether or not the Plan Commission had the authority to waive that requirement. County Attorney Dave can speak more on that if he'd like to, but it was determined that they could request that it not be included in the inventory and then not have to post the 10% bond.
Okay, Mr. Schilling, would you like to comment?
Yeah, if they ever change their mind and wanted it to be accepted into the county inventory, the county can inspect it. And if it doesn't meet the county standards, they can refuse to allow it to come into the inventory, or they can require it to be upgraded before it comes into the inventory. So I don't see a downside to this for the county.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Any other questions for staff from the members of the Plan Commission? If not, online,
I've got
oh,
a
yes, Mr.
question.
Garatas.
My question is on the not
not having it listed in the county's inventory, we're not voting on that, are we?
No,
Okay.
No.
Just to
only
be
a
clear.
bond.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Dave.
okay. I'd like to move to the petitioner, or the petitioner's representative, if they're here and they would like to address the Plan Commission. We'd like to recognize you. If you're online, please raise your hand in order to be recognized. Do we see them?
I don't see anyone. I'm not sure if I can only look at the panelists from my view, but I don't see anyone on here.
The attendees? Okay, well, I would like to open it up to the public. Is there a member of the public who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this item on the agenda involving releasing the bond back to the builder? If so, please raise your hand if you're here in person. If you're calling in via Zoom or by telephone, either raise your hand on Zoom virtually or press *9 on your telephone in order to be recognized. And since we don't see anyone, I come back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion.
In the matter of, unless somebody wants to make another comment in the matter of SIA 26-6, I move that we approve the request to release the performance bond.
Is there a second? Okay, great. Ms. Behrman?
This is a motion was made to approve the Mesca Storms minor subdivision performance bond release. Let's see. Start with Amy Thompson.
Yeah.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Jim Steinbrook,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 8-0.
Okay, wonderful. We move on to the added item onto the agenda, and that has to do with adding Barnes and Thornburg on a legal matter that involves the county. And Mr. Schilling, if you would like to present the case to us or the item.
Thank you very much. The county, the Plan Commission and the Planning Department have been sued in federal court. And the commissioners would like Barnes and Thornburg to represent the county on the case. Because there are multiple defendants that would be represented by one attorney, the rules of professional conduct and ethics require the parties to consent to that representation, the joint representation, because in some cases, one party will have interests that differ slightly from another party. And so it's necessary to obtain those consents. In this case, I don't see any divergence of interest among the parties. So simply asking you to consent to representation of the county, the Plan Commission, and the Planning Department by Barnes and Thornburg.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Are there questions for Mr. Schilling by members of the Plan Commission? Mr. Enright Randolph?
I guess, I know it's an ongoing case and you're probably limited to what you can divulge, but how much can you share with us to give us some sense of what this case is?
Well, it's a public record. I can share all of it. What would you like to know?
I mean, a summarization of it. I mean, I have a sense of what case this is, but this is the first I've heard of it. So I feel more comfortable getting a sense of what we're being asked.
Well, there's probably 11 or 12 counts in the case, raising issues of the constitutionality of our ordinance, the constitutionality of the application of our ordinance, questioning actions the county has taken on due process grounds, on equal protection grounds. So basically, the standard constitutional challenges to government activity.
And I guess is there, what's the case number name, I guess? Like,
The case is William J. Huff II as trustee of the William J. Huff II Revocable Trust Declaration dated June 28, 2011, and Nicole E. Huff as trustee of the Nicole E. Huff Revocable Trust Declaration dated June 28, 2011 versus Monroe County, the Monroe County Planning Commission, and the Monroe County Planning Department. And this is in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Indiana.
perfect, thank you. I'm up to speed.
Okay, any other questions from the people here physically present? I see Mr. Stainbrook and then Ms. Owens have their hands raised online. Mr. Stainbrook?
Oh, thank you. I didn't think that Mr. Schilling, I didn't think Dave would want to share as much as he did really in the public session. I'd leave that to Mr. Schilling again, but I think generally legal matters are permissible in closed session. But in having acknowledged that, I don't know at all what's going on. And I think outside counsel should have been brought in on other cases. And you've certainly gone, Mr. Schilling, with a prominent firm with competent and sufficient expertise, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess, Margaret, I fully intend to vote yes. I usually don't get into that, but Brother Tron has helped me sometimes to understand where he's coming from and how he's voting and so on. So I am diverting a little bit. I usually, I think after the discussion, just vote. But in this case, I want to say I may even abstain because I don't know anything about this at all. And I presume the executive committee does, or the commissioners do. And I think Mr. Schilling, I'm sure he does. I don't know if the commissioners made this decision. I just don't, on these legal matters, I know you don't want to do them in public, Dave, but if I'm going to vote going back to the time that Tron did not agree with me and everyone else on, I think we can quote a case, the Huff case, I think I kind of went with the leadership and the people in whom I have confidence, the people we elected and et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't know anything about what I was, I didn't know of the first thing about the Huff case. And I don't know now. These constitutional issues and going to the circuit court, is it, or the district court?
Strict.
The district?
It's the district court.
Yeah. Well, I would think local attorneys could go to the district court, maybe Mr. Schilling, but and Dave did a good job, I guess, of explaining what and so on. But again, you're going to a top-notch firm and a prominent firm and so on. You must be very concerned that an attorney here locally can't go to the district court. If you were going to the circuit court, I could understand. So I'm just saying, I guess Tron, in this case, I don't know how I'm going to vote. I have no objection to the firm. Okay, that's not for me, Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. And I think that Mr. Schilling explained at the very beginning, because there's more than one government unit involved, that it's good practice to have outside legal representation. But Mr. Schilling, if you have anything that you would like to say in response to Mr. Stainbrook's question or comments, it's fair to give you a chance.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Owens?
I couldn't hear Dave talking. Who is the plaintiff in this?
That is the Huff Trusts.
Huff Trust. Thank you.
William J. Huff II as trustee of the William J. Huff II Revocable Trust Declaration.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, just
Yes,
because my
Mr.
name was mentioned, I just wanted to go ahead and state my position on this, and I'm in support due to the advisement from our legal counsel. And I just wanted to go ahead and indicate that before we vote.
Okay, thank you. So that being said, I'd like to see if there are members of the public who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this administrative item. If so, please stand up or raise your hand. If you're attending virtually, please raise your hand. Or if you are calling in via telephone, please press *9 on your telephone to be recognized. Okay, I come back to members of the Plan Commission for a motion.
Looks like, does Mr. Stainbrook still have his hand up? Is that,
Yes.
does he still want to speak again? Or is that?
Mr. Stainbrook?
You know, Margaret, I didn't catch on, and it's not Mr. Schilling's responsibility or whatever. I guess I was like Dee in part there. I wanted to give Dave credit for having gone through all that, but I didn't even catch the name, and just by chance cited the Huff case as a previous item with which we dealt. I thought that was. I don't know what can be said here. I thought
We can't hear you,
settled that.
Mr. Stainbrook.
Well, I wonder if I'm, okay, can you hear me now? Margaret?
Showing up on captions.
Yeah, but his mouth
Hello?
isn't moving.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Stainbrook, are you finished? Because
No,
we
I
can't
didn't
hear
say anything, except can you hear me, Margaret?
Yeah, we can hear you. Give us one moment, please.
Mr. Stainbrook, are you finished?
Margaret, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jim, we can hear you. Yes.
Bernie?
When you're speaking, we can hear you, but we've been waiting for your answer.
Well,
Can you hear us?
Hey, that's nasty.
No,
Tech Service said they were adjusting that there was something, and you kept saying you couldn't hear me, so now you can hear me. I thought this was settled a long time ago, and I looked to Mr. Schilling for advice. I don't want to say anything wrong. This is a legal matter, but I think that's part of the problem. We've had no previous exposure to this, and now we're expected to vote on the law firm. I didn't think it was handled very wisely earlier. I know that some of the people involved, I'm going to say it, planning, they weren't in agreement. We took the easy way out. I think I can say that because mistakes were allegedly made, and
Mr.
all-
Mr. Stainbrook, this is
Yeah.
Mr. Pitts. Can I step in for just a sec?
well, okay, Jerry, go ahead, do your thing.
Okay, my thing is, I want you to know that this has gone to the federal court, and since there are multiple entities, other groups have looked at this and brought this to us and asked if we would agree to it. This is not something that originated with us. Nobody here had any knowledge of this before tonight. It hasn't gone to the executive committee and then come before the full plan commission tonight. This has simply come out of other hands into ours and asked for our vote. And we have received all of the information I think that Mr. Schilling has available to us at this time. Thank you.
Well, then Mr. Schilling doesn't know much of what's going on. If that's, he spoke very,
Mr. Stainbrook, that is out of order. I'm sorry, that is not.
I mean literally, Margaret, that David
That is-
doesn't have all of the information. I was not talking about proficiency or competence or knowing anything. I'm sure he knows that he doesn't want to go to the circuit court, but he could go to the district court. And in other words, what Jerry Pittsford has said to me is that no one, and I included Mr. Schilling, but leave that out of it. But you're hearing things that aren't being said.
It's inappropriate for you to make those aspersions. It's just.
What? I didn't make any aspersion.
So,
I,
Mr.
that's out of
Are you
order.
finished with your comments on this item?
I'm
It's so
finishing that
fine.
you're accusing me of having
Mr.
said
That
something
is
about
inappropriate.
someone that I didn't say.
Mr. Garatas is recognized.
I've got a quick question here, and I think, so right now, what we've got before us is a lawsuit in front of us. And there are 3 bodies that are being sued that are associated with the county. So instead of each one of us going out and hiring our own attorney, our own counsel, what we're trying to do is have that one counsel pack all of us together in order to defend the suit. And save money, but have a common voice and a thread. So we're gonna have to do something, the way I understand it, because we're being sued. So this is a matter of, and I respect what Jim's saying about deciding on the law firm, and I'm leaning on Mr. Schilling by giving us a suggestion that the law firm that the county is thinking of using is Barnes Thornburg. So we're going to have an attorney because the planning commission is being sued. There are 2 other people, 2 other groups, entities in that lawsuit. So in my opinion, we should all stand united and have one voice representing us. That's the way I take this. Is that a fair assessment? Thank you. So I can make a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
oh, excuse me.
Garatas.
Can I-
Mr. McCammon.
May I just make one other comment? I just want to make it clear also that the costs of this law firm are not coming out of the planning budget or the planning department or the plan commission. Mr. Schilling will be appearing before the county council to request an additional appropriation in the legal budget that will cover this, but this is not coming out of the hide of the plan commission. This is simply, as Mr. Garatas, Mr. Pittsford stated, this is simply to allow this law firm to represent all 3 bodies together. And I strongly support it.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Mr. Garatas for the motion that he was about
Okay, in
to.
the matter of the added item to the agenda where Barnes Thornburg was added as a legal firm to represent the Monroe County Plan Commission in the suit with the Huff property, I move that we allow that to go forward with their representation.
Second.
Would you please call the roll, Ms. Behrman?
Sure. All right, Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
I'm going to vote, but I want to object. I feel that I've been somewhat misread, and I'm not going to use words that are unnecessarily inflammatory. It'd just be creating some ill will here. But I want to make clear that I never said, never implied, or meant to suggest that Mr. Schilling did not know what he was doing. I meant to suggest that from the vagueness that was presented, I didn't know that I couldn't tell if legal counsel even knew of all of these charges. So I want to be careful that I don't defame or insult or anger or leash out. If I were going to say something about
Mr.
anyone,
Stainbrook, I'm sorry, but
you
the
would
time for
know that I
discussion is
said it.
finished. Tech
Now,
support, would
I
you please
vote
silence
yes.
Mr. Stainbrook? Tech support, would you please silence Mr. Stainbrook? Thank you. And let's continue with the vote. And I guess that's a 0 for Mr. Stainbrook. So,
He said he wanted to vote.
well, he has to vote. He refused to vote. Mr. Stainbrook, I'm sorry, you can do it via chat if he would like. I'm sorry. I have to keep this meeting in order. Thank you.
Hello. Tech service, can you get me back in?
I'm sorry, tech services, he's muted for the meeting for the time being. Could we please continue? with
Then
the vote?
how can I vote? You can't do that, Margaret. I'm going to go to court myself.
Mr. Schilling, could you please read in on this?
Well, if you would care to vote and be happy to accept that.
Mr. Stainbrook, if you would like to vote, fine, vote. Yes, no, or abstain. Tech
I
support.
voted. Now, wait a minute, damn it. I'm trying to vote. I voted yes.
Okay, we have a yes. Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook.
Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
and Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay,
Passes 8-0.
thank you. We have actually some significant items on the agenda and the public is assembled here. So I please request of my colleagues to remain with some professional decorum. And that's really important to us as a body and important to us with our colleagues and important to us with the public and with our professional responsibilities as we execute our duties and our oath of office here as members of the Plan Commission. So I please request that we continue without personal dispersions against other members of our staff or of other members of the Plan Commission. So move on to unfinished business. The first item is number 1, REZ-22-3, Kings Road Farm rezone from RE 2.5 to Ag Rural Reserve. This concerns 19.12 acre parcel in Benton South Township, Section 31 at 5577 East Kings Road. And the owner is Life is Better on the Farm. And please, Mr. Myers, would you please present this case?
Thank you. So this is the second time that the Planning Commission has heard this case. It was last heard on May 17th during the preliminary hearing. This is the final hearing for this case. All right, so as we've heard this one before, I will go a little bit quicker in my review of this one. And we can always come back to other items if we want more time to discuss them. The primary things that have changed from this report from last month's is that a new exhibit has been added. The RE 2.5 use table is added as exhibit 3. And then also an exhibit of letters of support. The letters of support last month were presented as part of the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, but they had come in too late to be published as part of the packet. So now those letters are included in your packet for your review. So this petition, just like many other rezone petitions, has gone through many committee meetings. The Plan Review Committee saw this petition on April 14th, offered their support for the rezone petition, and also discussed the historic nature of the structures on the property. The SHAR database indicates farmhouse and barn structures are contributing, and the PRC or Plan Review Committee recommended the petitioner go to the HP board for additional information and guidance. So the Historic Preservation Board of Review also saw this case a number of times and offered their support for the work to be done in the preservation and restoration project goals. And they also talked about the option of establishing the historic preservation overlay for this property. So at the second meeting, the Historic Preservation Board of Review offered a following statement that you can see on your screen. And that is to supplement the supplement the condition of approval of the rezone in that the petitioners submit a written commitment regarding the historic preservation overlay and some additional conditions regarding that I'll cover at the end when we provide the planning staff's recommendation. So as a little bit of a recap again, on the May 17th Plan Commission meeting, members discussed the idea of the petitioner removing uses from the Ag RR list as a written commitment. The Plan Commission members also discussed the implications and process of the additional HP overlay details. And then there was a number of neighbors that came out and offered their concerns and opposition to the proposed rezone as well. So there are a number of members of the public here again tonight that will likely add further comment. All right, so summary and background here. It's a zoning map amendment or rezone from estate residential 2.5 to agricultural rural reserve. The purpose is to provide the right zoning to convert the existing single family residence into a tourist home / cabin, which is a short-term rental type use. I have the definitions for chapter 801 and 802 for short-term lodging agreement and tourist home / cabin respectively. And I also have an item down here at the bottom of your screen that outlines the number of structures and their respective approximate square footages for your reference. So overall, if the rezone is approved, the tourist home / cabin will be a permitted use, subject to condition number 48. Condition number 48, you can see on the right side of your screen, has a number of items that must be met. The standard process for an individual to establish a tourist home / cabin on their property is to meet these conditions, as long as they're in the right zoning ordinance or zoning district. And they also have to go through the site plan review process with planning staff. That's where we make sure that all of these requirements are met, as well as the requirements for a site plan of this nature. If the rezone is denied, the petitioner may continue the use of the property as a single family residence or any of the other uses available in the RE 2.5 zoning district, as long as those respective conditions are met, if there are any for that specific use. Again, this is just the Plan Commission recommendation. The Board of Commissioners will make the final decision to approve or deny this request. All right, so here I have the location map, Benton South Township. It's 5577 East Kings Road. We have the slope map here to your right. You can see there are a number of steep slopes on the property. Anything over 15% is non-buildable area. You can see towards the middle of the property is where those structures are that the petitioner has mentioned and included in this report. Current zoning is RE 2.5. You'll note that there are some agricultural rural reserve zone properties to the east. And the comprehensive plan has it designated as Kua Rural Transition, or Monroe County Urbanizing Area Rural Transition. Next, I have some aerial pictometry for the petition site. I'm going to go ahead and just continually scroll through these. And we can come back to any of these pictures if we want to talk about them in more detail. All right, so here is the subdivision plat as well as the letter to the Plan Commission from the petitioner. This property is part of the Kings Road Minor Subdivision Amendment 3 for Lot 3A. It has an access easement that continues north into multiple other properties that are part of this subdivision that are vacant at this time. And you can see the location of structures or approximate location of structures that the petitioner provided on this plat document. All right, so here we have Exhibit 3A. This is part of the amended exhibit that was included in this updated report. This is the RE 2.5 zoning district uses that are permitted or conditional. P stands for permitted, C stands for conditional. If you have a conditional use, you have to go through the conditional use variance process through the Board of Zoning Appeals. The stars indicate that the following use is also permitted or conditionally permitted in the Agricultural Rural Reserve District. So you'll note that there are some overlapping of these two districts here. Some of these items that are starred may not appear verbatim, but their nature or intent are very similar to other land uses classified in Chapter 802. And here we have the uses permitted in the Agricultural Rural Reserve Zone. You'll note that a number of them are more agricultural in nature. As you'll note that the agricultural uses category is much longer than the rest of the uses here listed here. All right, and now we have letters of support. There are a number of letters of support here. I will not read all of them out due to time constraints, but they were all included in your packet. So I hope you had each of a time, and I hope all of you had time to read them. There's also a number of letters of opposition as well. The primary letter of opposition came in the form of one letter signed by multiple property owners that are in the area. And I'm sure that if we have any questions about any of these, we can come back to them. Again, I just hope you took the time and read all the letters. Okay, that brings us to the recommendation. Planning staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners based on findings of fact and compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan with the following condition. 1, petitioner submit a written commitment that the property owner submit an application for the historic preservation overlay within 2 years from the rezone approval. If the historic preservation overlay is not applied for within 2 years, The owner will not remonstrate against an overlay application prompted by the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board. I will now take any questions.
Do members of the plan, yes, Mr. Veritas?
Was that in the I didn't see that in the pack. Was that in the packet?
I believe so.
Was it? I'm sorry if I missed it. Can you zoom that just a little bit? Yeah, so move it up, please. Okay, thanks.
Oh, do you have any other questions, Mr. Veritas?
No, thank you.
Do other members, Mr. McKim?
Thank you. And this is actually a more general question about rezones. Is there any legal obligation for us to support or approve or for that matter, deny a rezone petition? If certain conditions are met, or is it a policy decision by the Plan Commission?
It is a policy recommendation by the Plan Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Pittsford?
Yeah, Drew, if this remained RE 2.5, what is the potential for subdivision of the 19 acres for multiple lots? I can't, I don't know if you've mentioned buildable area yet. Because I know that with 19 acres, there's bound to be opportunity for additional lots on this. Is that correct?
Yes, so the subdivision process for a property of this size, which is 19.12 acres. I don't believe they would be eligible for the minor subdivision. The minor subdivision, you need to have a minimum of 10 acres per lot if you're being serviced by a septic system. However, if sewer could be brought out here, or if it is possible connection, then they would be eligible to the minimum lot size standard of the RE 2.5 zoning district, which I believe is 2.5 acres.
Okay, right. So then also, I know that this is in a transition area. Was there consideration given to the preservation of this as open ground by making this change in zoning? So, I mean, it's a preservation of farm ground in essence, even if it's not actively farmed at the present time. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, is it reasonable to assume that by approving this rezone, that this ground would be preserved for future farm use should the future owner choose to do that?
I believe so. The property owner would have, their ability to do any type of use that would be permitted in that zoning district on the property. If they chose to preserve the property in that manner, then they would be able to do that.
Okay, but that would give them the ability to do that, or actually it would require them to change the zoning back to residential if they wanted to do more intense development, would be what my mind says. And then the last thing is, because I know the question is going to be raised, whether or not this is spot zoning, but we're not approving this. We're simply sending a recommendation forward. So if indeed it is a spot zoning that is not what the county comprehensive plan has in mind, if it's something that county commissioners frown upon, they will have an opportunity to cry foul on spot zoning. Is that correct?
That's
Just to be
correct.
clear.
Yes.
Okay. So whether or not we think it's spot zoning or not is really not relevant unless it's affecting our vote as an individual.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members here in person? Yes, Mr. Veritas, and then
So are you suggesting that since it can't be subdivided in anything less than a 10-acre parcel or a 19-acre, because it's 19 acres, that it can't be further subdivided?
Right,
Okay.
because there's not buildable area, but if it remains RE 2.5 with the extension of sewer, you could see a pop-up of a micro subdivision there. And that open space would be lost.
But since that, your point was that can't happen because of the,
Right, when it changed to ag RR.
right,
So there is some benefit in this. Also, it preserves some historic farm structure that otherwise, if it remains 2.5 and they choose to subdivide it, they would simply not agree to the commitment and there'd be no historic protection for those structures.
Ms. Thompson?
Yeah, the Sycamore Land Trust has it's not fee simple. It's some sort of agreement that it is a preservation area. On this 19 acres, it's west of the driveway. Yeah, it's mostly the steep sloped areas, which are mostly already protected under eco.
Okay, are there members of the Plan Commission attending via Zoom who would like to ask questions of staff on this? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, and then I'd like to turn to the petitioner. If the petitioner is here, Mr. Voorhees, would you please come up and tell us what you're doing and why you want to do it? And sign in, please. And you'll have 15 minutes.
Is your mic?
It's the button on the right.
Okay, so it's
Yes.
working. Thank you. Okay, well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak in favor of my petition here. My wife and I, we just want to say that we desire to be good neighbors to all of you who are here tonight, and we're committed to ensuring the preservation of the farm and the peacefulness and tranquility of the neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood and a beautiful farm, and our petition is to change the zoning from RE 2.5 per chapter 833 to Ag RR per chapter 802, and it's for the sole purpose that we gain the permitted use of the property as a vacation or short-term rental. We believe the property is perfectly suited for a short-term rental. It's in a low-density populated area. It's very private and secluded on its own 20-acre parcel, surrounded by hay fields and forest. You can barely see a neighbor's house from the front porch of this property, and I was over there yesterday and could barely hear the lawnmowers of my neighbors mowing their grass. It's very private and hard to and peaceful, and we would like to keep it that way. And we're asking the Planning Commission and the County Commissioners to grant our rezone request. The property is quite unique with respect to the surrounding RE 2.5 properties, in that it's a historical farmstead related to the initial King family farm. And the character of the property, in my opinion, fits in far more with Ag RR than with RE 2.5. Not sure what spot zoning means, but I think it means just having a one-off zone in the middle of others. I wasn't thinking it was that, because there's Ag RR at the end of James Road and Kings Road. So it seems like within this neighborhood, within a half a mile, there's residents or there's property zoned in the same zoning that we're seeking. So we sit on 20 acres surrounded by 47 other acres of forest and hayfield. The Ag RR is not a significant departure from RE 2.5. As you could see, there are several uses that can be used in both zonings, but for our purposes, we are legally required to have it zoned Ag RR if we want to use it as we wish as a short-term rental Airbnb. There are The property will still be used as housing for people. We're not trying to change the use of the home. It's going to be used for short-term housing for up to 7 visitors. Parties and events will not be allowed. The renters are going to be vetted using the Airbnb user reviews. We have external cameras that we have in our advertising. It is disclosed that there are cameras, ring cameras on the doors and on the driveway, so we can monitor the parking and make sure that there's no parties taking place from our renters. And we feel that the use of the farm as a short-term rental will in no way affect negatively the neighborhood or our neighbors. And we are actually aligned with that goal of our opposition here, and that we want to maintain the peaceful nature of the neighborhood. And we do have many supporters, and I hope you had a chance to read the letters of support from several of neighbors who live in the neighborhood, and other Monroe County residents who are supportive in general of having additional short-term rentals, as there's a shortage of short-term rentals in our county. Our other supporters tend to be from a different demographic, and they have young children at home, and it's difficult for them to attend the meeting. But 2 of my supporters are actually on call for hospital emergencies, but I think one of them is actually online hoping to speak in support when I'm finished. As I'm sure my neighbors are aware that the RE 2.5 allows for only a limited amount of permitted non-conditional uses. And those include cemeteries, crops and pasture, parks and playgrounds, residential care for the developmentally delayed, residential care home for the mentally ill, residential care home for 5 individuals, single family dwellings, or utility substations and transmission facilities. And we've tried the single family dwelling long-term rentals, and it's just an expensive property to maintain. It's hard to find renters who can afford to cover just the expenses of the property. And we think that a short-term rental can solve that problem. Personally, I think that a well-managed Airbnb is a better option than these other permitted options under RE 2.5. And there are also several other benefits to the community and Monroe County by approving the petition and rezoning and using the home as a short-term rental. There are several residents within the actual neighborhood that have expressed interest in renting our home when out-of-town family come to town, including one of the signers of the petition. He said if we prevail, he still wants to rent the property from us in November for his family to come visit. We support small businesses in Monroe County. We support Monroe, a lawn care company that maintains the property from mowing and landscaping. We support a farmer who we provide the hay at no cost every year for his cattle. And we support house cleaners who will be coming to clean and will be paying to turn over the home between guests. Well, it's also my understanding we'll be required to pay a 5% innkeeper's tax to Monroe County. That from my research online, at least, that there's a innkeeper's tax for short-term rentals. We, as it's been noted, it will apply for historical preservation oversight and ensure the protection of the historical site in perpetuity. Plan to restore the farmstead and the barns with the profits from the short-term rental. And we intend to donate a percentage of our profits to local Monroe County charities and Indiana University. Short-term guests will bring revenue to other local businesses as well, just by the nature of them being in town and utilizing our resources in town. There's a shortage of short-term rentals in hotels, and feel that we can help be a part of the solution to that. In closing, we are committed to remaining diligent in vetting of our renters and enforcing our rules of no parties. We actually denied a rental request for the month of July just this last week that would have covered all of our expenses because I was not comfortable with the with their online reviews. And so that's going to cost me a lot of money, but I am committed to protecting the property and the peaceful nature of the neighborhood and the well-being of the property and our neighbors and their peaceful lives will always take precedence over any profits that we can generate from this property. But property is expensive, and while I want everything in me wants to preserve the property, I need to find a way to have this generate at least the income to cover the expenses of the property so that I can preserve it, maintain it, and restore the barns. And I do feel like, you know, I am on, I know that I respect all of your opinions, and I know you're here to oppose this rezone. And I hope that if it does go through, that I think that you will not know a difference of the property, that you won't see any difference in the nature of the property or in the peacefulness of the neighborhood or your lives. I don't think they'll change at all. And if they did, I would shut down the Airbnb. If this, I don't want to maintain a nuisance, and I don't want to disrupt my neighbors or I have friends that live in this neighborhood and who all have small children. They're friends of my kids. And anyway, I thank you for your consideration, and I would welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Voorhees. Does anyone here on the Plan Commission have a question for Mr. Voorhees? Or would you like to proceed with the testimony of the other supporters and opponents? Mr. Enright.
Just one question. You were saying that there was another zone at the end of, I guess, could you indicate where you?
At the end of James Road and at the end of Kings Road, both of the properties at the end of those roads are zoned Ag RR.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do any members of the Plan Commission who are attending via Zoom have a question for Mr. Voorhees? Okay, then I don't see any. So Mr. Stainbrook actually has a question. Sorry. Mr. Stainbrook, he needs to be unmuted, I believe, text services. Mr. Stainbrook, can you unmute yourself? Thank you. So, Mr. Stainbrook, do you have a question for Mr. Voorhees?
Well, can you hear me, Margaret?
Yes.
Okay. As the petitioner carefully reviewed and had any contact with those that may be remonstrating, has there been any communication, neighborhood meetings, or may I ask?
We have not had a neighborhood meeting. We did use the Elevate app to send letters to each of the homeowners in the neighborhood to explain our preservation efforts. And we did hear back from several signers of the petition who had decided that they no longer supported the petition after they received our letter. And yeah.
No, I'm sorry, and it may not be a large part of your consideration, but you say that some people who were supportive of your petition application, that some of those favoring the short-term rental, that they decided that they were not in favor of it?
I've received several text messages from specifically four signers of the petition who had sent me text messages saying that they had received our letter, that they had signed the petition, and they regretted signing the petition. They no longer supported the petition.
Oh, I see. They no longer supported the petition representing the remonstration. So they,
yes,
you could infer that maybe then they were in favor
They
okay.
had been in favor until they received my letter.
They had been in favor of, they had been against your.
Yes, yes, sir. They had
All
been
right.
against the
I
petition
think,
and they
yeah.
received my letter and they changed their minds.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Okay, are there members of the public who are
Madam-
here to speak in favor or in support of this petition? If so, please stand up and come to the lectern and sign in. It's actually on the lectern. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Oh, got it.
Okay. So, sir, please state your name and know that you have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Wolfeld. I'm a physician that works with Dr. Voorhees. So, we've had the privilege of going out to his property. When I moved here from Dallas, it was just like a revelation to see this Indiana farmhouse and, on that land. And, we were really struck by it. And, we've had the privilege of being out there with them, walking the fields with our kids. He's taking us out for rides in the mule, and in the winter, we've gone sledding over there. I've never seen him have a party or anything like that. It's really secluded when you're out there. It's really wonderful to be able to, see that, land. I can't even see anybody else around when I've been out there. I've know working with him, we've talked about, his desire to maintain the property as it is. And it's really, I know he enjoys going out there walking, on the property, and having that seclusion and, from stressful job, it's nice to get out and, walk around and have some time to yourself. So, I know that his desire is to, continue having it as it is. For us, it'd be nice to have an option when we have friends come in from out of town to be able to stay at a short-term rental like this. It just is not something we've been able to find. But I know that, friends of ours coming from New York or Dallas, would love to stay at a place like that rather than try to go to a hotel with their children and stuff. So it'd be nice to have that kind of opportunity or option. And so, I know from, talking to him before, because I was inquiring about, how he, was so lucky to find a property like that, it had been, I guess the previous owner had looked at possibly subdividing it off into, a number of lots. And I know that that's not his intention, but, I really respect that he wants to keep it as it is because, I'd be tempted to break it apart and, use it and as making a little neighborhood or something. But I think it's really honorable and, I definitely support his, decision to, or his petition to rezone this to the agricultural exemption. I think it's, it's really cool to go out there and, see the hay bales and, and I think it's really, honorable of him too, to, be able to provide that for, the farmers and stuff. So anyway, I think that's all I have to add. Yeah, thanks. No problem.
Hello, good evening. My name is Glenn Hopkins. I'm the principal at University Elementary. And I have known the Voorhees for the past few years as the principal of their children. And listening to the evidence that Mr. Myers presented and what is being brought before you as a committee here, I think that the Voorhees, I know that the Voorhees, Dr. Voorhees and his wife, they will follow through on everything that is up there. So I see this more thinking about their character. I've been in education for 21 years now, and I have obviously over that span of time interacted with thousands of families, thousands of family units and parents. And there are few parents, there are few families that have the level of integrity and honesty that the Voorhees have. And so when I hear Dr. Voorhees and his wife talk about their plans for this property, I have the fullest confidence that they will follow through on what they are saying. They are not a family, in my opinion, that is looking to turn the almighty dollar. They are just looking to do what's right by their community. Mrs. Voorhees, she is an active member of our PTO, and everything that she does when she comes to school to work with children or be on the PTO is in the best interest of our school community. And I know that that extends to our Bloomington community, to our county as well. So I just want to speak in support of them. I know that they're the highest quality people that you're going to know, that you can trust this community, your neighborhood. I know that it's not easy to have these conversations, but they will follow through on what they say, and they won't make these massive changes that are going to, I do not believe they're going to disrupt your lives. On a personal note, where I live in an affluent neighborhood as well. Sounds like you have a very affluent space where you live. Congratulations. And 3 doors down from me, there is a family that turned their space into an Airbnb, and our lots are not as large as it sounds like yours are. But what we have found as a neighborhood is that we do not even notice that this space is being utilized in that capacity. So when Dr. Voorhees says that he is going to vet these people and make sure that they are using the property with integrity, I fully believe that will happen in their case as well. So I hope that the committee here can move forward with the recommendation that has been put before you tonight. Thank you. You're not whatever, but you push me to be also. I think that you're like
One quick moment, Margaret, it seems that your mic might be muted. Dee just mentioned a comment in the chat. Okay.
Here. Here's mine.
Okay, Mr. Eads, if you could unmute yourself, we would like you to tell us why you support this petition. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak, and thanks for all the work you all do. I'm speaking for Jason and Rachel. My wife and I have known them for about 20 years. Like Mr. Hopkins said, they're extremely honorable people, and I 100% believe that they will follow through on everything they're proposing. Our main concern as residents in the area, and we live on James Road, which is just off Kings Road, is the preservation of the property and of the farmhouse. Like like Dr. Wolfeld said, it is a remarkable property. It's like having a park within our neighborhood. During the summer, we can walk in the fields, and at winter, we can sled down the hill with multiple families coming there just randomly. In addition, it's a property that we would certainly love to utilize for family and friends that would be coming into town for extended weekend visits or things like that. Personally, we've used Airbnb. I think it's an extremely useful service for families like us, and I trust that they would follow through on the limitations that they would put in terms of no parties and anything of that nature. So I think that this would be the best option for the property and for the surrounding neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eads. And I also see that Mr. Rich has his hand raised if he would like to speak for 3 minutes in support of the petition. You have 3 minutes once you're unmuted.
Hi there. Hope everyone can hear me. Apologize for not being there in person. But I just kind of want to second what has been said, that Jason and Rachel are two of the most genuine people I know. And I think it's kind of admirable that they're trying to keep this as a farmstead. I mean, I love taking my dog for a walk in the morning and seeing the pasture. And I think the best way, the most likely way that it will stay that way is if it stays in their hands. So I just kind of wanted to speak out and try to voice my support. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public, either attending via Zoom or on telephone, who would like to speak in support of this petition? If you're calling in by phone, please press *9 to be recognized. Okay, I turn now to the members of the public who are here in person who would like to speak in opposition to the petition. And you can come to the lectern, sign in, and you'll each have 3 minutes to speak. Hello, sir. If you would state your name and.
Yes, my name is Don Hollinger. I'm a property owner adjacent to the petitioner's property on directly to the west. I think it was confirmed earlier that part of this 19 acres is a nature conservancy, Sycamore Valley Land Trust. Approximately 8 acres of that 19 is already noted as Sycamore Valley Land Trust. This is a neighborhood that's been developing over the last maybe 50 years since the first property was moved out from the King's Farm. It's grown slowly and respectfully of the rural nature. All the immediately surrounded property, included the additional lots that are plotted on the Voorhees property, are zoned RE 2.5, as you well know. Putting Ag RR right in the middle, literally in the middle of this, is a zoning change that will stay there for perpetuity until somebody decides to change that. No matter how well intentioned Mr. Voorhees is with renting to responsible guests, this new zone stays with the property, and we cannot be assured of the responsibility of future owners. I'd also like to bring up that all of us in this neighborhood are part of the Lake Monroe watershed. We all received notices here recently to make sure our septic systems were up to date. Most of us who have built in recent years have been required to put in a mound system. It is more expensive, but the technology is much greater than the leach fields, which are old technology of the past. So I think protecting the watershed is something that needs to be looked into, and I don't see that listed in part of opening this up to a vacation home or rental cabin. Long-term rentals, which are allowed within RE 2.5, is a slower revenue generator, but it is a revenue generator, as well as there are other agricultural ways to increase the or provide for a revenue stream. So I just like you consider those points, and I thank you for my time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming out tonight. If there's another person who would like to speak in opposition, yes, sir. Please come to the lectern, sign in and state your name, and then you have 3 minutes.
My name is Barrett Madden, and I live on Mahalia Way, which is, there are 2 lots between my house and the property in question here. I'm opposed to any regulatory change that would permit this property to be operated as short-term rental. But the issue being discussed is not just a waiver to the current prohibition against them, if that is even possible, but a zoning change to the new AGRR. Since the last meeting, I've learned of the extensive list of permitted uses under AGRR that would be utterly incompatible with our neighborhood of single-family homes. To list just a few: recreational vehicle park, sawmill, automobile repair service, wastewater treatment facility, garbage and trash removal facility, and the worst, confined feeding operation and feedlot. A feedlot, especially a pig feedlot, is one of the most evil smelling things imaginable. This would be allowed within 100 feet of the front door of one of our residents and would impact dozens of nearby properties to the point of making them unsaleable. I don't think Mr. Voorhees would do any of the things on this list. I'm not worried about that, but he's only the present owner. He's not a future owner. He's only bought it fairly recently, and his own plans have changed greatly since he bought it. He was originally going to build his own house there, changed his mind, and so this is where we are. To repeat, I oppose the rezoning that would allow uses that are utterly incompatible with our residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. If there's someone else who would like to speak in opposition? Yes, sorry. If you would sign in and please state your name. You will have 3 minutes.
My name is Dan Withard, and I live at 5799 Kings Road at the end of the road. And I am opposed to the proposal because I'm just opposed to really the rezoning of changing zoning. Seems to me like undermining the whole idea of having zoning to begin with anyway. And so I had empathy for the petitioner. I hope he can do well with the property, but I'm opposed to changing the rules for individual people to come in and buy a piece of property that shouldn't entitle them to, get to change the rules that are already in place. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Withard. Yes. Hi.
Hi, thanks for this opportunity to speak. My name is Dana Carpenter. I live at 5431 East Kings Road with my husband. We have lived on Kings Road for almost 30 years now. We also own 5475 and 5491 as long-term rentals. They are right in a line next to our property and the next house. So our investment in the neighborhood is considerable. I have watched that farm for years and years, and I have to say that, first of all, the notion you can't hear anything, the notion that it's so secluded, I've been able to hear kids playing in that yard all along. If there is some kind of celebration going on there, it will be heard, it will be seen. The notion that you can barely see any houses from that property, if he can't see at least 6 houses from that property, he needs to get his glasses adjusted. It is a big property, but it's also a neighborhood where we all see each other, know each other. I would like to address just a couple of things. First of all, there was talk at the last meeting about the dangers of additional traffic. We had another serious accident at the turnoff from Route 46 into Kings Road just this past week. Landscaper who's coming to mow my tenant's yard right next door to mine was rear-ended. Their trailer was destroyed. Their mowers were destroyed. And we really don't need a lot of people who don't know the place getting involved in that traffic. Second of all, the notion that I hope that Mr. Voorhees is sincere when he says he doesn't want it to change the nature of the neighborhood. I would like to think he's sincere. I would like to know who gets to make that decision, that the nature of the neighborhood has been changed. And is he willing to put it in writing? Is he willing to say, if we find it disruptive, he will, for instance, if he wants to maintain the land, put covenants and restrictions on the land to sell it, that the land not be subdivided, and then put it on the market. It's a very strong rental market. I have no doubt he could sell it. It's a desirable area. Councilwoman Thomas said last time that she didn't see the difference between a long-term tenant and a short-term tenant. My tenants are all on year leases, and I have to tell you, there's all the difference in the world. I think I said at the last meeting too, that I had an Airbnb on the other side, the house that I do not own. And we had to deal with drunken revelers more than once. My tenants go to work, they grab some groceries, they come home, they feed their kids, they watch a little TV, they go to bed, they get up the next day, they do it again. They have an interest in maintaining cordiality with their neighbors. They have an interest in maintaining the peace and quiet of the neighborhood. Indeed, every single person who comes to see the place is like, oh, it's so quiet, it's so peaceful. We want that. We want it a lot. But the other thing is that people who come to a short-term rental will be, for the most part, coming to celebrate something. They will be coming for homecoming. They will be coming for graduation. They will be coming for Thanksgiving or Christmas. They will be coming for a wedding. Those people will be, by definition, not going to work. They will be celebrating. There is a difference. It is stark.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter, for coming out tonight and sharing your opinion. And yes, she's next, and then you.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. My name is Paula Sunderman. I live directly across from the farm at 5578 East Kings Road. I am sorry to just spell the wonderful things, but Kings Road is dangerous. The intersection of Kings Road and Highway 46 is very dangerous. And this is the only entrance and exit from Kings Road. You heard last meeting that there were 0 accidents on Kings Road. That is incorrect. There have been 6 accidents that we know of. 5 were rear end collisions, one most recently on 6/16. One resident has sustained serious injuries, damaging bones under her eyes. Data are from the Records Department of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, 2014 to the present. Previous accident record is not available. There are numerous potential collisions, including an almost head-on on 6/18. I've witnessed most of these. In addition, vehicles, including semis, attempt to pass on right around eastbound vehicles turning left onto Kings Road. This can result in near collision as pass-around area is too small to sustain large vehicles. Patrick Henry, Senior Transportation Planner for the City of Bloomington, is helping me with NDOT to alert them to this dangerous intersection. He said the number of accidents at this intersection I have do not include calls answered by city police, IU police, and Indiana Highway Patrol. His office is compiling this information and will make it available. Kings Road and the intersection with Highway 46 are extremely dangerous. To put more traffic on it with short-term rentals could result in more accidents, including possibly fatal ones. Therefore, I strongly oppose the rezoning of a portion of Kings Road Farm to agricultural rural to allow short-term rentals and more traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunderman.
Sorry for this. I have
Oh, that's,
bifocals.
I understand. I understand. Thank you for coming tonight. And sir, if you just sign in and then tell us your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Eric Schmitz. I am here as a nearby neighbor and a member of the public and in no official capacity. I live at 5431 East Kings Road with my wife Dana. I attended the first meeting and I understand the reasons why the owners want to do what they're proposing. I have read the letters in support now as well as opposition. And I see good arguments made even by supporters. And so that's all well and good. But there's one thing that I have not really heard much about, and I wonder if we're possibly missing a more fundamental and maybe more relevant question. When the commission applied the RE 2.5 zoning several years back, I must presume that the members had good reasons for choosing that particular designation to zone it that way. I also presume that the owners who subdivided this, I believe the Dayhoffs, previous owners, agreed with that decision or at least found it to be acceptable. So my question would be, what is it about the neighborhood and about this parcel in particular that would justify changing the zoning? And again, I appreciate the reason that the owners want to do the preservation, but is that really the main point here? And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz. Is there anyone else here in the Nat Hill room who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? The members of the public who came out tonight? If not, I turn now to Zoom. And if there's a member of the public who would like to speak in opposition of this petition, would you kindly raise your hand, your virtual hand in Zoom so we can recognize you? I see none. If there are members of the public who have called in via telephone, would you press *9 in order to be recognized? I see none. I do see 3 messages in chat. I would like staff to check those to make sure that we, okay, those were technical issues. Well, I turn back to the petitioner. You have a 5-minute response to address some of the statements that were made to the Plan Commission. Thank you, Mr. Voorhees.
Good evening. And so the first to Mr. Hollinger, is the 8 acres directly to the west of the home, the hayfield between the home and his property and the forest are part of the Sycamore Land Trust. So 10 of the 10 or 11 of the acres are not part of the Sycamore Land Trust. And then there was we don't have a desire to sell the property. We'd like to hopefully pass it on to our children someday. We love the property, but I'm wondering, it was brought up at the last meeting about an option to maybe limiting some of the uses of Ag RR to alleviate some of these concerns by Gary Patton about some of the undesirable uses of like an RV park, that we're not going to do any of these things. But I would be certainly willing to limit the use of some of these undesirable things, because all we're trying to do is get the desired use of a short-term rental Airbnb. In terms of like what you said, a feed lot, like it's with RE 2.5 or Ag RR, we're allowed to have a certain amount of livestock on the property that so it's the same. There's no difference in whether it's Ag RR or RE 2.5. The property can be used as pasture land. But I would be willing to limit the use of restricting some of these undesirable uses, or even pledge to rezone it back to RE 2.5 if the worst came to worst and we were going to sell the property. I hope I don't never have to sell the property. I'd like to keep it and preserve it and pass it on to the family. See, I heard Dan Wither was opposed to rezoning because basically I would agree that zoning changes, like if I were going to zone this to commercial or industrial, really change the nature of the property, then I would be in agreement with you. I'm only trying to change it to Ag RR, which is already in the neighborhood, and for the sole purpose of using it to house humans for a short period of time. Dana Carpenter, we will not be allowing parties. I guess you have a different perspective on me that you can hear things, but we won't be allowing any parties or events at the property. I don't think that this short-term rental would increase traffic at all. I think it would actually decrease traffic because it would likely not be rented 100% of the time. So, and then Paula, I would like to point out that every day there are new people that are new to that neighborhood coming to deliver pizzas, to deliver groceries, electricians, heating, air conditioning. There are people that are new to that property that come into the neighborhood every day. And I do agree that the entrance off of 46 is you got to be really careful turning onto the road. I don't think that has anything to do with the rezone petition in my opinion. But I agree with the point about the road. It's a busy road. It's a busy road and you have to be careful. And Eric Schmitz, the reason, so I presume that the Day House rezoned it when they were breaking it up and replatting it to try to make a small neighborhood. I don't really want to. I own all of the land now, and I don't want to make it a neighborhood. I would like to preserve it as the pasture land as it is, with the wildflowers and the hay fields and the hiking trails, and allow my guests to Monroe County to enjoy it and neighbors in the neighborhood to hike and enjoy it, is what I would like to, what my goal would be. Let's see. So I'd just also like to say that, as a surgeon, I have taken an oath to do no harm, and I take that very seriously in my personal life as well. And Rach and I have, we have no intention of causing any harm in any way to the neighbors or the property or the neighborhood. And it's a very serious commitment that I've made in my professional and that I carry on to my personal life. And I'd ask that you would vote in favor of our rezone request, that we maintain the high-end Airbnb rent only to respectful individuals We have no intention of allowing our Airbnb to change or disrupt the lives of any of the neighbors in any way. And I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your time and your perspectives.
Thank you, Mr. Voorhees. I turn back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a motion. Yes, Mr. McKim?
This decision is a really difficult one for me. I mean, I've certainly voted in favor of a lot more rezone petitions than I've opposed. But rezones come down to, as we've already heard, to a policy recommendation. There's no right to a rezone. I think the issue needs to be framed as what is the public good of the proposed change to our zoning code balanced against the public costs. And, most of the testimony in favor of this petition has emphasized the good character of the Voorhees. And I completely agree that they sound like really wonderful people. And I have no doubt that they would do their best to keep their word. But I don't think we should be making decisions based on the character and intentions of the current owner. We need to consider the use, not the user. So, again, weighing the public benefits of the petition versus the costs. On the benefit side, I'm just not entirely convinced that having a short-term rental has much of a public benefit at all. I guess it's fair to say that there's some additional effort to preserving a historic barn that constitutes a public benefit. But I don't see how the petition advances any policy goals, for example, that my constituents are calling for in our community. If this were a petition to build additional houses, I'd be supporting it in a hot second, even against the opposition of neighbors. But I don't see how the minimal policy benefits of this particular rezone outweigh the costs of having a non-resident short-term rental in the community, many of which have already been described in this meeting. So I mean, unless I hear something to change my mind, I don't think I can support this position.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. Mr. Pittsford?
Thank you, Madam President. I've been around for a long time, and I know these are always difficult ones. There was a lot of question raised about the intensity of use that's available. Agricultural rural reserves, several of those mentioned are actually conditional, so there's not like it's just a buy right. They're going to pop up without any kind of conditions that restrict them. One use that is available in RE 2.5 that would present significantly greater disturbance for the neighborhood, and it is a permitted use, it's not even conditional, is a daycare center. So, you're looking at a situation where that could easily take place as it stands now. In ag rural reserve, that would never be a possibility. The other thing I wanted to address is, because I was around when the zoning changed and when the last comprehensive plan was written, this is a transitional area. So you're always going to have a mix of some residential, and there's residential already existing there. So the idea of going with RE 2.5 was consistent with what was already built. I think if you look at the intention of the comp plan, had there not been anything built there, it probably would have been used as buffer. It is in a steep slope area. It is in the Lake Monroe watershed. I think it would be the preference of any comprehensive plan in Monroe County that your house does not be there. So I think the 2.5 was an admission that the house has already existed, and that was the best thing to do. I see this change of zoning not necessarily only as a benefit to the petitioner who has a specific use in mind. That is not a concern to me in my decision. What is a concern to me is an opportunity to really preserve this property as it is, and the number of acres that are there. Part of it's already in a conservation trust. Maybe the rest of it one day will be that it would be preserved that way. With RE 2.5, if Dr. Voorhees were to sell this property, any other developer could come in and take a couple of whacks at it and put 2 more houses on there. So I understand we're dancing between flames, but I just wanted to share that is my perspective on this. And I thank you for allowing me to explain my perspective. I appreciate everybody's viewpoint. I understand the petitioner and the neighbors and all their concerns. And I know that this will be a difficult decision for the county commissioners. So I'll leave it up to them to make the final determination. But my vote has been determined. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Are there any other comments from Mr. Garatas?
Yeah, I've got just a couple that it aligns somewhat with what Jerry said. A property like this with the size and the conservation areas, most of the items on that agro reserve list are probably not going to be possible. From an engineering standpoint and even a site use standpoint, most of them are conditional as they are. So that's going to go under some sort of site plan review. This is a 19-acre parcel. I did some quick dimensions. Don't hold me to this, but it looked to me like the nearest homes to this property were in the 550 to 650 feet range. Hollow valleys and ridge tops can carry sound in different ways. So I'm not going to get into that, but there's a lot of privacy on this 19-acre parcel that I think could support this use. I like the fact that the Voorhees are committed to maintaining the home and the property, and I can certainly respect the fact that there needs to be a revenue driver in order to do that. With somebody else in that home, somebody else buying the property, who knows what else could be done, just like who knows if it could be a disturbance to the neighborhood. What Mr. Voorhees, Dr. Voorhees, suggested with the amount of the traffic, I would suggest that the amount of traffic generated by this short-term rental would be greatly reduced from what a single-family residential home would be. So then you say, okay, well, unfamiliarity with roads, the different things that come online with that, those are outliers that I don't take much account in. They're valid, but the percentage of use of the roadways for this house would be drastically reduced as a short-term rental. Some of the uses that are permitted, and Jerry picked up on daycare, but there are some residential uses, institutional uses that are allowed in the RE 2.5 that are just permitted. And I think that those could be much more intense than what they may be with the agro reserve. And I would just suggest that they're valid uses. So I don't want to dig into those at all, but there's some uses that could be used to preserve the property, in my opinion, that could probably generate more revenue, but would be more disruptive to the neighborhood, maybe. So those are just my opinions on how I'm seeing this come through. From the PRC on, I've been supportive of this. I think that the neighbors and the Voorhees are very respectful and courteous to one another, and that's always nice to see. I didn't hear anybody say that they didn't trust what Dr. Voorhees was saying. So you've got to look down the chain of title. I respect that. But I think that with the nature of the property and what's there, I think that this could be a long-standing benefit to the county, because I do see the preservation of the house and the property itself being a part of what will happen as a result of this petition. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Yes, Ms. Thompson?
I'll just add a few comments in alignment with Jerry and Bernie. I do respect all the neighbors' comments and your position, certainly. But I do really highly value the historic preservation overlay and the fact that we're going to protect some, what I consider to be significant structures in our community. And there's less and less of those all the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thomas?
Yes, thanks again for everyone for being here on both sides of this issue. I think you've all made great points, and that makes a decision especially hard because I can see why you would want to have a short-term rental in your neighborhood. But my concern is this could become 2 lots, perhaps 3 lots, with 3 residences on it. We lose the historic preservation, which I'm sure you all enjoy seeing this beautiful property as you're driving through the neighborhood and in your backyard and et cetera. So it's a really tough call. I am not as worried about some of these uses listed for Ag RR because they are conditional, because they require a great deal more property than the 9 acres that are actually available to build on. And so that limits the worries there. But it's interesting to consider what may come if this doesn't become a short-term rental. And we have to look at that. And so that's why I'm going to vote the way I am. But I really appreciate all of you. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph.
This is a pretty tough decision, and I'm gonna kind of go back to some of the comments I made when we heard this the first time around is we're doing a county development ordinance, and I think we just started talking about short-term rentals and vacation homes. I'm curious if planning actually has a position on this potentially being a allowable use in the proposed zone. If you wanted to bring up the proposed zoning map, that might help for people to follow along, but we're looking at a rural transition area. If this question's a little premature, I understand, but that is a question.
So yeah, that's a great point, Tron. We are working on a new consolidated development ordinance. It is still very much in the drafting stage. We've had a few call out meetings in the past about getting community support. But essentially, I'll have to pull up the property itself quickly to see what the proposed zoning would be. But we are at least 2 years out, maybe more, for actually getting the new updated ordinance adopted. And there is definitely open conversation about how uses will look in the future for some of these properties.
Okay, well, I guess I'll speak for my position on the ordinance review committee, where I feel that there has been a dialogue where we are entertaining more flexibility with this as a permitted use in some zones. So I think the idea of allowing this in more areas in the county, in my opinion, is fair. There's one thing I don't necessarily like the most, and that's this request being intertwined with the historic preservation initiative, but everyone's comfortable with that, and that's fine. I'd like to see these bifurcated in the future, and if we're looking at a rezone, we're looking at the mayor of the rezone. But I see how this is favorable. This does kind of go with our comprehensive plan with preserving these contributing historic elements like the barn. But it kind of reminds me of something that my colleague on the plan commission gracefully taught me, Jim Stainbrook, about when I was offering a friendly amendment with a second. It was intertwined. It was like, well, if you want the second, let's take the friendly amendment. So I don't like entertaining these parallel because I feel like it puts the petitioner in a position that I would not like to see them in. So I'll just state that simply like that. Again, this is not the easiest case. A lot of the discussion is I think more in line with character and intention, and I don't think that's in the Plan Commission's purview. I do think traffic concerns are. I did have the thought where this is very hard to determine if this is going to create more of a traffic hazard or not, for it only being occupied, here and there throughout the year. I didn't come in with a decision. I still don't think I have one. It's going to be difficult when it gets to me, but I don't see a huge negative impact. But I rather just see this be a permitted use in some of these zones versus having to go through a rezone process. And again, I don't want to speak to the character of future renters in a long-term rental or future renters in the Airbnb situation that's been described, or the character of the petitioner. That's not within my decision-making or in my decision process. I'll leave my comments there.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Mr. Stainbrook? You're muted. Tech Services, could you please unmute Mr. Stainbrook?
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
we can hear you,
Margaret,
Mr. Stainbrook.
you have unmuted me then. You can hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the comments, and I started by trying to remember all of the names to include, of course, the petitioner and the friendly, I might say, cordial anyway, remonstrators. I did take some difference with Jeff, just a minor point perhaps. Well, not minor, but it's a more subjective thing. And also with Tron. If Dr. Voorhees as a surgeon is working in the emergency room, I think that does speak highly of the integrity one would anticipate there. In fact, we had a friend years ago, speaking of stress, as one of the other speakers mentioned, it being stressful. It was so stressful for him that he went back and did a residency in dermatology, and he's a rather successful dermatologist now in Georgia, but it's very demanding. I think it speaks of one's character. And so the way it may be pertinent here, although as others have pointed out, the ownership might change. Dr. Voorhees doesn't anticipate a change. And I do think, being the man of integrity that he appears to be, that those things of which he's assuring us, that those can be considered. Now, having said that, and listening again, trying to listen to everyone, including the remonstrators, I thought that the first 3 or 4 speakers made a very, very, well, I felt compelling presentation. It is spot zoning. If it includes features that are to the positive good of the largest community, then of course that's legal in Indiana. It shouldn't be done if it's done to the advantage of a single property owner. Now, again, Dr. Voorhees, being the articulate gentleman he is, he's pointed out that this would be good for all of us. But I do have a question in that way about about how widely it would benefit the county and the county per se and its citizens. And so I find the presentation, and I appreciate, as Bernie said, I believe, I do remember Bernie spoke eloquently, or I'll leave that to Jerry Pittsford. But I have to feel that the remonstrators make, for me, a very I hate to say compelling, but that's the best I can do right now. I think the compelling presentation, for me personally, listening to everyone and all of our friends on this commission, but I think the remonstrators make the compelling argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. And I have a few comments that I'd like to say myself. Number one, this will be heard and decided by the 3 county commissioners at a future county commission meeting. Number 2, I believe that members of this board think that the interests that you expressed as neighbors to Mr. Voorhees and to this property might be better protected if the zoning were changed to Ag RR. That's what I believe I heard them say, because I think they listened to you. They heard you. They understand what you would like for that property and for your neighborhood. But they believe that the future of that property would be better protected with the intentions that Mr. Voorhees has proposed. That being said, I believe that the neighbors and the people living right nearest to the property have the most to gain or to lose from whatever happens on that property. And so I have heard what you have said myself, and I believe in what the complaints that you've made, that it's spot zoning and that it will alter the neighborhood in a way that you do not wish for it to be altered. And so my vote is going to be with you as the residents who are concerned. That being said, I would encourage you to go home and contemplate about what Mr. Voorhees has proposed and what some of the actual technicalities of this zoning change will represent to you. For instance, as it sits now, it's possible for there to be in the RE 2.5 that a residential home could be, not a residential, a care facility could be put there. There are some zoning uses that could result in the property being maybe more active, or perhaps a group home could be put there, or there are other uses that that you may or may not want in that area. With the historic preservation overlay and with it being converted to ag-RR, it's possible that your interests would be better served if you would work with Mr. Voorhees to help him make a happy home for what his desire is. Never mind. As far as I'm concerned, I've heard you, you don't want it, and I feel that I am going to vote with you. But before it goes to the to the commissioners, please think about all those things, because I think everyone who serves on this board has heard you and has heard the petitioner. And perhaps there's some more deliberation that you as a group could or should do together. So with that being said, I think Mr. Pittsford has a motion that he'd like to make.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I am prepared at this time to make a motion. In case number REZ-22-3, petition requesting rezone from RE 2.5 to ag-RR on a piece of property located at what is commonly known as 5577 East Kings Road. The petitioner is James Voorhees, also doing business as Life is Better on the Farm, LLC. This parcel is 19.12 acres, currently zoned as state residential in Benton Township. It lays in the Makua Rural Transition according to the current comp plan designation. In this case, I recommend forwarding this petition to the Board of Commissioners with a positive recommendation based on the findings of fact in compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the following condition, which is one, that the petitioner submit a written commitment that the property owner submit an application for the historic preservation overlay within 2 years from the rezone approval. If the historic preservation overlay is not applied for within 2 years, the owner will not remonstrate against an overlay application prompted by the Monroe County Historical Preservation Board. I'd also add as a recommendation to the Voorhees that when they advertise this as a space available on our Airbnb or any other short-term rental, that they include an advisement that this is accessed from a busy state highway with limited visibility. That is my recommendation or my motion in sum. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Ms. Behrman, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Amy Thompson?
Yes.
I should kind of correct myself that this is a motion to send a favorable recommendation to the plan commit or to the Monroe County Commissioners with the condition that was within the staff report and one additional condition that the site be advertised, that the property is accessed by a busy road, correct?
Yeah, I think that there's more specific language that I fully trust that the Voorhees will be able to accomplish.
All right.
And if not, they can call me, I'll tell them what I said.
Great. All right. So I did have a yes from Amy Thompson. Bernie Garitas,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook,
Well, I'm going to vote yes, but I'd like to point out, Margaret, by exercising control the way you're doing, I had no opportunity to second the motion or to, well, for instance, and that's not all that substantial, but I hate to see petty peek and snits enter into this. This is the first evening that I really experienced that. I vote no.
so that was a vote of no for Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Will you go back or am I the last one?
sorry, can you say that again?
I was gonna say, if you have another member you could call on, I could go. I'm not trying to, or am I the last member? Okay, I'll be prepared. This is, I guess my role is to make a decision here. I want to recuse myself, but I'm not going to. I generally, it's a tough decision. And there's a couple factors here, and I know that everyone's in agreement with the historic overlay, but again, I don't necessarily like these intertwined. I know that a lot of this historic overlay will help preserve that property, and I am for preservation and but more voluntarily, this kind of seems baked into the cake a little too much for me to support. So solely on the merit of that right there, I'm going to vote no.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
No.
and Margaret Clemens.
No. So I would like to thank the public for coming out and Mr. Voorhees for coming out. And I encourage you to work together to try to figure out if you can find some more common ground before it goes to the three commissioners for a final decision. Yes, Mr. Yes. She's the acting director right now.
The motion to forward a positive recommendation passed 6-3. Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
And when will this come before the commissioners?
There's 5-4.
Well, so I had no's as Jeff McKim, Jim Stainbrook, Tron Enright Randolph. Oh, you're right. I've got Margaret. Got it. So it's 5-4. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's a toss up. So, just work together. If you feel more resolved in your position, come forward to the commissioners and tell them that you're even more resolved than you were when you came before the Plan Commission. And if you think that there are some salient points in what is being proposed that would actually help protect what you express are your interests, well, come before the commissioners and tell them that as well. We thank you for your participation and thank you for coming out and taking this evening to share your thoughts with us, to everyone. And thank you, Mr. Voorhees, as well. Thank you. Okay. Yes, we can take a 5-minute break. Reconvene this meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission. And the next item on the agenda is ZOA 21-11. And this is an ordinance 2022-12, an amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 801 definitions. And this is a final hearing. And this is an amendment to the change in use definition. So I think Ms. Behrman, if you would be so kind as to talk us through these changes and tell us their significance, we'd be
Right.
grateful.
Jackie and I put our heads together before she left for the week, and we kind of came up with a script here. So I'm going to mostly be reading. So this is in reference to petition ZOA-21-11, also known as ordinance 2022-12. So this petition originally received a favorable recommendation by the Plan Commission on April 19th, 2022. And it was then heard May 11th, 2022 at the commissioners meeting and given a favorable vote with a few changes. I am going to share screen real quick now.
Sorry.
All right, and on page 67 of the packet is where we find the edits. So there were a few edits made by the commissioners. One was to strike certified under certified plot plan. And also in existence was struck and changed to exist. And then a second change was made under certified site plan for the word scaled was removed, since in all cases, site plans will now be certified. Since the commissioners made changes at their May 11th meeting, the Plan Commission has 45 days, which would be June 25th, 2022, to take action, or else the changes go into effect. The Planning Department is now requesting changes to correct Chapter 815, and you'll be hearing those in a couple of petitions later. And this is including but not limited to removing architect as a profession that can certify plot plans, such as the Planning Department is asking that the Plan Commission reject the changes proposed today so that we can clean up Chapter 801 and get a final copy to you. Staff has found that with striking of the word certified under the certified plot plan, there is now inconsistency in the first statement saying that it is both a scaled drawing and that it is certified. So in the next iteration, we will provide a definition for certified plot plan and for plot plan. Should the Plan Commission reject the changes and the county commissioners take no action, it would be formally rejected. If the Plan Commission approves the changes, then the ordinance takes effect today. So the other changes in the chapter, changes in use, an addition of structure, commercial. So these are definitions. So there were changes in definitions of use, the change of use, structure, comma, commercial, structure, comma, residential, and structure, comma, residential accessory. These changes are not time sensitive. And so staff believes that it would be okay if this text was rejected and that we had more time to clean up Chapter 801 so that it made sense with Chapter 815, which you will be hearing in just a few more minutes here. What kind of questions do you have?
Okay, Commissioner Thomas has a question.
Well, actually, I don't have a question. I just want to apologize to my colleagues on this board, but I appreciate your consideration of these changes. We just thought that as we talked through it, it just seemed to make more sense for clarity's sake. So we appreciate you entertaining this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph.
As you could imagine, as county surveyor, I get some inquiries from the public, and whenever you talk about certified site plan, I got a couple extra inquiries from the public, and a lot of their concerns I think are addressed here. And obviously I'll be supportive of rejecting this to give planning more time, and supportive most likely of the new text amendment we'll be looking at in the future. But I just wanted to indicate that this does address a few concerns that I've heard from the public in the last month or so.
Thank you. Mr. Pittsford?
Yes, Madam President, thank you. I missed a lot of this discussion, and I know these are very nuanced things when you get into the definitions and stuff. So I just want to say that I'm sorry I missed those conversations. And at this time, as these move forward, I am going to abstain from voting. It's too much for me to get caught up on the history, but I am going to trust that all of you have put your very best into it, and I'm sure the final product is going to be stellar.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments from members of the Plan Commission or Dee or Jim? Any questions or comments?
None for me, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Garitas has one.
So if there's a negative vote, then somebody's gonna make a motion that we follow the recommendations by the Executive Board of County Commissioners. Is that correct? Or somebody makes a motion that we don't follow. If we don't follow, then the ordinance stays as it's already been presented to the commissioners, and then they revote, or how does that?
So
what are the
it's
mechanics?
been to the commissioners. So they made a few changes and we have actually found a few changes that we would still like to make since then. So it came back here with the commissioners' changes. If you vote to approve this, it goes into effect right now. If you reject it, then we will not be taking it back to the commissioners and it will just kind of fade away in a sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Schilling.
The commissioners, if you rejected it tonight, the commissioners would have 45 days to override that objection. If they don't take any action within the 45 days, it automatically is rejected.
And then that would give the planning department to instigate the changes that they think would be more professionally sound. Is that it?
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. McKim.
So I just want to clarify once again, what you want is for what the planning department, what staff wants is for us to reject to vote to reject ZOA -21-11 so that you can basically start again and incorporate what you've learned through all the discussion and the commissioner's input. So you're not rejecting the commissioner's input. You've just discovered other changes that you really need to make as well.
Yeah, we just need to smooth it out and have separate definitions for certified plot plan and plot plan. And we scrutinized it and found a couple of other things. So we'll bring it back different.
I'm not clear on the procedure then, because it seems to me that you should just wait on this until you have the other changes ready and bring it back as one item that incorporates the changes the board made, and then whatever changes you also want to make. I guess I'm not understanding why we even have to go through this process. If you just want to continue this, we can just continue this.
Yeah, since the commissioners amended what the plan commission sent to them, the plan commission has 45 days from the commissioner's action
right
to either accept or reject. If
Oh,
they
and
don't
we're at the end of
reject,
that.
then it's automatically becomes effective. June
Okay,
25th.
so we're at the end of that time period is what you're
Yes.
saying. Okay. So, but by rejecting it, what kind of time does that buy?
That gives the commissioners 45 days to decide whether to override the plan commission.
But in the meantime, we're going to have something else to look at and within 30 days, I would assume. We're going to have it at the June meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, the July meetings.
Yeah, we'll try to put something together for.
I mean, you're kind of putting yourself under.
Then it's still dead.
It's
Yeah.
dead after 45 days.
So it doesn't necessarily
Right, the commissioners can just let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to leave it the way it is. So we
But
might
if-
not let it go. So
But if we reject it and you do nothing, then it's dead.
Yeah,
Right,
and okay, so as
right? I just want to make sure
as
that was.
existential as is this conversation, I think I should hear from Mr. Stainbrook right now.
I'm going to be real subtle, maybe not so diplomatic. How do I, when you're prepared to advise me, anyone, that is Mr. Schilling, Ms. Thomas, Dr. Thomas, and Tammy, I want to vote to leave this with the commissioners. So do I vote for this or against this? Tammy or anyone?
I'm lost. Okay, so.
Even my-
That's the issue.
Hey, Tammy, did you answer that question? I don't want to answer.
I'll try to answer that.
Because I'll get it wrong.
Mr. Stanbrook, the planning staff has found some additional issues with chapter 801 definitions that we would like to correct. And so we would hopefully hope that you would vote to reject this, because one of the other changes that was made, we just didn't agree with, and we would like to just see it rejected so that we can fix all of the things at once with chapter 801 so that they kind of match up to chapter 815, which you will be seeing text amendment for that as well tonight.
Well, I'm sure that's helpful, Tammy, but
I don't know what my colleagues, yeah.
I don't want to lose the changes the commissioners. I mean, we are an advisory body. I just threw that in to kind of try to justify what I'm asking. How do I vote? I mean, you're interested in the changes that the professional staff has made. I want to be sure we keep the changes. I want to vote in such a way that it would keep the changes that the commissioners have made.
Well, then you would vote yes tonight.
Thank you,
So,
Margaret.
But that doesn't give them the opportunity to make the changes that the planning staff has yet to recommend. And the planning staff feels that they could have a more professional product quicker if we vote no and give them a chance to redraft it. It doesn't prevent the commissioners from overriding our vote and just deliberating and deciding, no, this is exactly what we want. But the planning staff feels that they have yet another clarification up their sleeves that they'd like to put into this ordinance.
And
Right?
And just to make this even more confusing, if I might, please allow me, that no matter what happens, the staff can still bring additional verbiage changes. They can bring another ordinance to everyone, the plan commission and then the board of commissioners. Once you've looked at it here, we've looked at it here. So I mean, this doesn't mean you can't ever amend this again. And I think that's the sticking point here.
It sounds like a party.
It does.
Madam President, I
Yeah.
take back my current statement. I know just as much as everybody here.
Okay, so with that being said, Mr. Enright Randall, yes.
I'm sorry about the feedback. I'll do my best. Just to try to be concise and as straightforward as possible. And if I overlook a couple of things, sorry. If we vote to reject this, what our hopes are is the commissioners don't take action to overturn our vote to reject this, and this is what I'm getting at, then planning is going to take the considerations and recommendations from the Board of County Commissioners and to the other elements within the chapter that they find are somewhat conflicting and bring us a new revised amendment that incorporate the two. So my question is, planning is going to take in the recommendations from the Board of Commissioners as they redraft this and present it to the Plan Commission in the future, correct?
Correct. I think we want to have two separate definitions for certified plot plan and plot plan.
Absolutely. And I thought I was right, but I felt like I could say it clearly.
Mr. Garitas,
It's only to confuse it. If we reject it, it goes to the plan, it goes to the Executive Board of County Commissioners. And they can if we reject it, then they can go ahead and approve it. If they let it set for 45 days, it just dies. If we reject it now, then staff has got an opportunity to change the verbiage to what they want. And with respect to what Julie just said, I didn't mean to point, with respect to what Julie just said, I think it would be a waste of time to go through and amend all the language, bring it back. I think that what my opinion is, we let staff chew on it. We reject it tonight. We chew on it and we let staff chew on it, get the language they want, and then bring back an ordinance that would probably happen. That's the way I'm gonna go.
I feel that is just as elegant a solution as more elegant than the mangled web we have woven. So if if we could have a motion, then we could move on.
Do we need
That
to
would-
take public testimony on?
Oh, is there a member of the public who would like to comment on this change to the ordinance who is present in the room?
I'm not weighing in on that.
Is there a member who is attending via Zoom who would like to speak on this issue? If so, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your telephone to be heard. And if not, then we bring it back for a motion and some expeditious
I move we reject petition ZOA-21-11.
Second.
All right, so that is a motion to reject. And a second. All right. Julie Thomas.
You had to start with me, didn't you?
Well, let's just let the bells toll for a second.
Well, this is no reflection on my colleagues, but I'll vote yes, just because we all have things to do tonight.
All right, I got a yes. Bernie Garatas,
Yes.
okay. Jerry Pittsford,
I abstain.
got it. Margaret Clement,
yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Jerry, let's see, Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
and Tron Enright Randolph.
I just laughed and my mic was live. That means nothing to the seriousness of this discussion, just the complexity of it. So I apologize for anyone that heard my giggle there. Sometimes people are funny here and I think it's good to have a smile and be light-hearted occasionally. I vote yes.
All right, motion passes 8-0 with 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Okay, and I want to thank in advance Ms. Chelsea Moss for being so patient with us this evening. We're moving on finally to your item on the agenda, which is REZ-22-4, Young Trucking Construction Shop Rezone from IG to HI. And this concerns an 8.5 acre parcel at 1238 North Lesh Road. And the owner currently is Arrow Properties. And Mr. Myers, if you would please go over this with us.
Thank you. All right, so this one is the Young Trucking. Young Trucking Construction Shop rezone from IG to HI. So this one has already seen the plan review committee. This is the preliminary hearing. There is a waiver of final hearing requested for this petition. The plan review committee voted 5-0, to forward with a positive recommendation with the following concerns and recommendations. Being that the petitioner limits some of the uses on the subject property that are currently permitted under the HI zone by way of written commitment. And some of those examples of uses that they would wish to be written out include garbage/rubbish collection /removal facilities, rock crushing, water treatment facility, and adult-oriented business. So giving a quick summary here, petition site is totaling 8.5 acres. The request is to amend the zoning map from general industrial to heavy industrial. The petitioner's intention behind the rezone request is to provide for the appropriate zoning to establish a trucking terminal. Use determination process with staff and the property owner and owner's representative identified that this, the proposed use on the property would fall under trucking terminal. This determination was appealed and went to the Board of Zoning Appeals, where they affirmed the determination by the planning director that the proposed use is classified as a trucking terminal. If the rezone request is approved by the county commissioners, the petitioner intends to complete the planning processes for the establishment of the trucking terminal use on the property, which includes the commercial site plan process, as well as special condition number 31, which applies to trucking terminals, which states site shall be screened with landscaping or an opaque fence or wall to a height of at least 6 feet. As a special note, there was a grading permit prior issued to this property before the rezone request. That grading permit was issued on November 17th, 2021. And based upon the submitted plans by the petitioner, it appears that the grade work performed was done within an existing drainage easement, which is notified in Exhibit 3. Planning staff is working with the petitioner and county stormwater to rectify this issue. There has been some conversations between the petitioner and planning staff to amend this, and we are still working with stormwater to get it right, potentially through the site plan process that will be coming after this rezone request. If the rezone is denied, the petitioner may pursue any of the available permitted uses under the general industrial zoning district, subject to commercial site plan requirements and any associated special conditions with those uses. All right, so trucking terminal is defined as a terminal facility used by highway type property carrying vehicles, which would include truck maintenance facilities. And as I stated, that determination was affirmed by the Board of Zoning Appeals and made by the planning director for the proposed use of the site. Here I have the location map and the slope map. You'll note that the property has very small amounts of steep slopes. Up here in the northeast corner, there's actually it's a drainage area that we'll see highlighted in a few of the next maps. Current zoning is in general industrial or IG. There are some limited industrial in the area as well as some PUDs. The comprehensive plan has it designated as Makua employment. Here we have the Curry and Loesch minor subdivision plat. You'll note that lot 3 up in the northwest corner is the subject property. And up here you can also see just barely a detention area designated for stormwater. We'll see some more details here. This is the as-built for the site provided by the petitioner. This gravel pad here is what was performed under the grading permit that was issued in November of 2021. You'll note that there is a drainage easement that runs north-south along this area where my cursor is, and that is where they mistakenly built the gravel pad over. Now I have some on-the-ground photographs that were taken during the building permit inspection by planning staff. You'll note that the grade work is complete. And then just some general site photographs here, how the property looks. I'm going to scroll through these rather quickly. In case we have any questions, we can come back to them. Here we have the petitioner's letter to the Planning Commission, basically stating that their intention to develop the property for the trucking terminal use and use the property as a headquarters for Young Trucking Incorporated. And they have some also some items here that fall in line with their opinion on how the comprehensive plan looks and in comparison to this rezone request, as well as the nearby properties. Here we also have a forwarded commitment from the petitioner regarding the limitation of uses on the site, basically stating that they are amenable to removing these listed uses here as previously recommended by the Plan Review Committee, including central garbage and rubbish, remote garbage and rubbish removal, wastewater treatment facility, water treatment facility, agricultural sale barn, and bottled gas storage distribution. Here we have the proposed site plan. This is just a draft. This would go through the standard process of site plan, commercial site plan review administratively by the planning department. So you can kind of get an idea of what they're at least planning for the use of the property in regards to scale and development. We can come back to this if you have any questions, but again, this request tonight is for the rezone itself. I've included two separate tables of uses. One of the tables is IG zone or general industrial, that's on the left. And then the proposed zoning change to HI, heavy industrial, is on the right. Again, I use the stars here to indicate that the following use is also permitted or conditionally permitted in the requested zoning district. So a lot of overlap here from the IG zone. And of course, there's a larger amount of uses, period, within the heavy industrial zoning district. All right, that brings me to the staff's recommendation. Staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners based on the findings of fact and compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan, subject to the following condition. One, that the petitioner record a written commitment limiting some of the uses on the subject property that are normally permitted under the heavy industrial zoning district as recommended by the Monroe County Plan Review Committee. I will now take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Are there questions for Mr. Myers? Mr. Garitas?
Just a quick comment, Drew, I want to just compliment you on the use tables and the way you put the asterisks for stars next to the ones. I mean, I think even on the last petition, it helped some of the public understand what those common uses were, and what the commonality is between the two uses. So that's very helpful too.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Pittsford.
Yeah, I do have a question. What is the potential for employment here? Because this is in the McCool employment area. When I think trucking terminal, I don't think high number of employees, and I know there's some equipment rental and stuff, but most of the uses around this are industrial to the extent that they do provide better than fair amount of employment. So that's my question.
Thank you. I believe that the petitioner's representative would be able to answer that question more effectively, but I do know that it's for a trucking terminal is the way that it fit into the zoning ordinance, but they're also using it as a construction shop. So there will be some employment. I can't say exactly how many employees they expect to have, but I don't believe that it would just be, 1 to 2. I think it would be a larger operation. But again, I would defer to the petitioner's representative to speak more on that.
Okay, you're right, and that's a good point, Drew. Mike, I guess I really should put a finer point on my question. To what extent did you consider this employment designation when you made the positive recommendation?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So it is the comprehensive plan is McCool employment. Based upon conversations with planning staff and the petitioner, we try to outline the similarities between the comprehensive plan and the petition. And that is also one of the primary duties, if not the primary duty, of the Plan Review Committee to help us identify how it is compatible with the comprehensive plan. And the Plan Review Committee voted 5-0 in regards to that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Mr. McKim?
Thank you. So just to clarify, the uses that would be that staff is recommending be excluded if we recommend approval of this are central garbage rubbish, remote garbage rubbish, wastewater, water treatment, agricultural sale barn, and bottled gas storage and distribution. Is there anything else?
Correct. So staff had also talked about with the Plan Review Committee of also removing adult-oriented businesses. But there is some conditions associated with that may preclude it anyways from the use on the site.
Okay. So is it your recommendation that be included in the list excluded or not, or just leave it off because it's already being handled elsewhere?
So at the time that we made the recommendation with the Plan Review Committee, we weren't sure whether or not that use would be permitted even with its own conditions on the site. So typically, yes, we would say include that, but I believe that it excludes itself based on the conditions, but I would want to double check that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Mr. Stainbrook has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you, Margaret. As usual, Jeff's ahead of me. More generally speaking, Tammy, Drew, maybe Mr. Schilling, how can the petitioner redefine the zoning, if that's the zoning, and I'm not for having the garbage and these other things, whatever that they've agreed to exclude, but I don't see how you can take a zone with zoning and then it's not indiscriminate, I shouldn't say that, but selectively. I don't see how you can selectively exclude certain uses. And just as came up so pointedly in the hearing on Dr. Voorhees' property, when the remonstrators point out that the zoning goes with the property, it just seems to me that this is not good or best practice to take a zoning and then redefine it. And especially when that's done by the initiative, for whatever reason, whatever motive that the petitioner has. It doesn't make sense to me, but a lot of things in the world don't make sense. So Tammy, I guess you're the director tonight, or maybe Mr. Schilling.
Yeah, I can answer that. The petitioner has the option under Indiana law to offer commitments to the Plan Commission to induce approval of an application. And so this petitioner has voluntarily agreed to limit the number of uses that might be harmful to surrounding properties in his application.
You're the lawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. Okay, I know that Ms. Moss has been extremely patient with us tonight, and I assume you're representing the petitioner. So you have 15 minutes to talk with us about what you want to do and how you're going to do it. So thank you.
Chelsea Moss with Abram Moss Design Group, and I represent the petitioner on this project. So Drew did a great job in kind of introducing the project. I just wanted to touch on a few things that have come up either in some of your questions or some previous questions just for clarification. So wanted to kind of touch on, this does align, we feel that this aligns with the employment area for the comprehensive plan. Currently they are operating and plan to operate about 50 trucks, and then we'll also have office staff. So you're looking at 50 plus employees on this property, which is fairly substantial for the size of lot. They have a pretty big operation, and most of the operation would move to this site. It also is in line with the current draft of the CDO. This is kind of slated in the current draft to go to HI. So we're not asking for anything that's not kind of outside of where things seem to be heading anyways from a planning perspective. Drew touched on the drainage easement that is currently in the area that they did some fill work. As part of their normal operations, they are constantly bringing in fill, and because this area is sunken down several feet across the whole area, we applied for a grading permit to bring in some fill that he already had access to as one of many of the fill sites that they go to. So that's where that came, but the drainage easement is actually for an underground drainage pipe. I want to make sure that nobody's thinking we're filling a ditch or anything. That easement is for an existing underground pipe that goes to the detention pond on the north side of the property. And from a site plan perspective, we're not planning on putting any buildings in that area. It would just be parking areas, which are allowed in those easements per the covenants on the plat. Let's see here. I think as far as the letter, I did want to point out the commitment letter. One thing that the plan review committee had requested be on there was rock crushing, and that is not included on our letter that we submitted. We specifically didn't include that because they do have mobile rock crushing units that they use, and they may use that to actually do some more fill work on that site. We didn't want to put the site in jeopardy of having an issue of construction right off the bat. The site's not big enough to operate a large rock crushing facility. But for that temporary use, especially while they're constructing the site, we didn't want to have any limitations in that perspective. Otherwise, I think besides the adult-oriented business, everything else that the Plan Review Committee requests or mentioned, we went ahead and included on there. Most of those uses honestly wouldn't fit on the site anyways, similar to one of the previous petitions. But the overall use does fit with the area. Highway Department has reviewed this. There's a little bit of widening that we'll have to do on the private road to meet current standards, but that'll all be included in the site plan development.
Okay, is that the,
Yeah.
okay, does any member of the Plan Commission have questions for Ms. Moss? Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, I have two questions. One is for both you and staff simultaneously. Can we just put the rock crushing back in there, even though I know that it's really about a quarry type rock crushing process that refers to, but can we put it back into the commitment post construction of the property? I don't know if there's a way to do that. That's a staff question. I don't know if
that's probably, I'm not sure on that.
But I don't know if your client would be okay with that.
I'm not sure. I would have to talk to him on that. Honestly, in many aspects, most of what I would see as concerns about rock crushing in that area would be mitigated by other permitting. So from an air quality perspective, dust would have to be reduced and, sprayed or whatnot. We would still have to, if they were to do any rock crushing in the future, they would have to have all of the stormwater pollution prevention measures in place and maintained continuously. From a noise perspective, it's in the area that would have to meet all of your noise standards. It is also in an area that is supposed to be annexed. That is one of the agreed upon, like the approved annexed areas. So it's theoretically within the city and the future as well. So, but noise and dust are usually the biggest complaints from a rock crushing perspective. And I think the noise ordinance, as well as the stormwater pollution prevention CSGP requirements, would alleviate most of those concerns from a regulatory standpoint.
I would have to do more research on that part of it because I'm not comfortable with that. But let me go ahead and ask you my other question, which is what is being done to mitigate this as a friendly nuisance in an area that will have a lot of pedestrian traffic with the trail nearby? Are trucks going to be stored in buildings? Are they just going to be out in the open? Is there fencing, concertina wire kind of fencing or some kind of trees and
There will
fencing?
be fencing around most of it, and there will be a 6-foot tall berm, vegetated berm on the north end. That's the one area where it is against technically a little bit more residential rural area. We are maintaining the existing buffer. I think we may take out just a handful of trees right on the edge. There's an existing vegetated buffer, pretty large buffer on the west side of the property, and most of that is staying. We're not tearing any of that out. So from Lush, you will really not see, in fact, you can't see the site right now from Lush unless you drive down the private drive.
Right. Okay. I still have concerns about rock crushing because of the neighbors, because I don't know how they would be notified in order to come in to tell us they don't want that. That's why I'm not comfortable with this at this moment. So I'll just tell you that part. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and so are there any further questions, Mr. Garatas? It looks like
On the rock crushing, when we looked at it, PRC, I wasn't in favor of the eliminating the rock crushing because I think it's a pretty reasonable use with the operation that's there. I like the site because it's accessible to Rogers Quarry, Ingram Quarry. You can jump on 69 to get on 37 and get down to Ingram fairly easily. The operation would be consolidated into one location, which I think does hit the employment issue and would allow that to grow in an area that I think would be good for that location. I've done permitting on rock quarries and quarries, and I don't think the scale that Chelsea may be talking about is maybe some of what I've seen, but there are very arduous requirements that go with it, with Rule 6, IDEM permits, Rule 5, which we're all familiar with. And my thought was the same with the noise. We've got ordinances and we've got rules in place that don't differentiate what the noise is. It says what the noise can be at the property line. So I wouldn't have a problem with the rock crusher. I think it's a good location for the property. I think it makes what their primary efforts are very accessible. So.
thank you, Mr. Garatas. I think the questions for Ms. Moss are finished, and if there, I will then turn to members of the public. If there are members of the public who would like to speak in support of this petition, please raise your hand or on Zoom or press *9 on the telephone. If there are members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition, please raise their virtual hand on Zoom or press *9 on the telephone. I'll give that a second to see if people can find the buttons that they need to push. Okay, I don't see any comments that would like to be made. So I return now to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion. Mr.
Go ahead, Jeff, excuse me.
Well, actually, I just want to confirm, this is just the preliminary hearing. So
Yeah.
we can do nothing if that would give Commissioner Thomas an opportunity to do a little more research on rock crushing and come to and have the petitioner maybe come to some kind of offer or commitment to that would satisfy Commissioner Thomas. Is that
Okay,
correct?
Correct.
okay. Does
I would like
anybody,
to echo that approach.
pardon me?
I'm in support of that approach. I'd like to
Okay,
voice that.
and just wonder if Mr. Stainbrook or Ms. Owens have anything to add?
That was my question. My other question.
I do not.
Excuse me.
You go ahead, Mr.
I
Garatas.
think not.
I'm sorry. Ms.
Okay. My question is,
Okay.
sorry, Jim, I'm blabbing here. One of us has to go, so I'm just going to keep going. My question is, Chelsea, if this is a preliminary hearing and these are units that Aero Properties or Young Trucking has, can you bring in or can you offer up some photographs of the size and the configuration of these rock crushing units?
I can.
See if they're available. Okay, thanks.
Well, I would just like to ask Ms. Moss, before you leave the podium, is there anything that would help you for the next presentation and the next hearing?
So I guess it sounds like you're looking for a bit more information on kind of rock crushing operations, what would be involved in that, what regulations would need to be adhered to as is, and potentially a commitment to after construction. I'd have to work with staff on if and how that might be applicable.
Okay, I think that that sounds exactly right. And we thank you as always for your professional presentation. And thank you. Okay, yes, yes, okay. So we move on now to the last item on the agenda. Well, we have actually a few more because we have reports.
If I
Yeah.
might just ask, Dave, do they have to deny the waiver of final hearing or can they just move on? Does there have to be any vote?
That's the plan commission. If they want to deny it by a vote, that's fine. Otherwise, it just passes on if you
It's-
don't approve a waiver.
Yes. Okay, so we'll see you again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're moving on to ZOA 22-1 amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 815, site plan review. This is a preliminary hearing and a waiver of final hearing is requested. And I think Ms. Behrman will present this.
Right. So this is the text amendment I mentioned earlier that kind of goes in tandem with chapter 801 that we want to clean up on a little bit. So we have a few changes. The first one is on page 134, where we will remove scaled and basically keeping in line with, we want to see certified site plans, certified plot plans, and plot plans as our definitions to use consistently. On page 135 of the packet, we're wanting to get rid of scaled drawing and replace that with plot plan. And this will be for, residential accessory structures, things that don't have to have that certified plot plan. We also have a small Scrivener's error on page 136 at the top under the residential column, the letter V. Just we're striking that. It was not intended to be required for a certified plot plan. And then on page 137, also letters B and C, we are going to strike or architect because we realize a certified site plan definitely needs to be signed by either an engineer or a land surveyor. So we're striking architect from both of those. And then letter J, I believe, is the last one we have on page 137. So here we're for certified plot plans and plot plans in the future. Those plans are going to need to show lot boundaries, but we will not be requiring certified, like a surveyed area per se. So we're striking the latter half of that.
Okay, are there questions or comments from members of the Plan Commission? I have one. It's on page 101, where item A is removed that, it says it's repealed by ordinance 2015-02. A division of land into 2 or more tracts of which all tracts are at least 5 acres in size. And that was repealed by another ordinance. So I think I just answered my question. Sorry about that. Anybody else have any questions or Mr. Stainbrook, Ms. Owens? Is there any member of the public who would like to speak on this?
Margaret,
yes,
pardon me,
Mr.
if it's still open for, I'm not for or against striking architects, but that seems to be going along. Why then in D, Tammy, we have still a surveyor and architect? Does architect?
In letter B?
No, D is in dog.
So that's just stating the name of the person who produced the certified site plan or plot plan.
Yeah, but pardon me, Tammy, I don't mean to interrupt rudely, but in C, haven't you eliminated or architects, or why do you want the name of an architect?
I see what you're saying. And I will say that
editorial, no big deal, but
it is possible. I think there is a possibility that a plot plan could be submitted by an architect.
Well, then
Because
don't you
if
want to
you
put
think about
architect?
a
don't you wanna
certified,
put Architect back in C then?
no, because that would be the certified plot plan that would
It's
require,
certified down here, I thought, Tammy. I'll cease and desist. It's editorial, but I don't quite get that.
I can offer some clarification, Jim. So items B and C, if you'll note that they are related to commercial site or plot plans or residential plot plans. And we're removing architect from those two letter items because in the nature of certifying something, you have to have a specific license and be able to, produce something that proves that what we're looking for, which is essentially lot lines, topographical lines, that sort of information. And we felt that architect most likely would not be able to provide that sort of certification. We do keep it in the D item because you'll note that it also allows for residential accessory structures. And there's a little bit less of a standard of how much detail you need to provide into that type of non-certified plot plan. And we believe that an architect could most likely be able to provide that information without having to certify it.
Okay. Any other discussion or any other motion, or is there anything that anyone would like to do before we move on to administrative reports?
I'll make a motion in the matter of ZOA 22-1. Amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 815 site plan review. I move we forward to the Board of Commissioners with a positive recommendation, the text amendments as laid out in the packet and waive final hearing.
Second.
Okay.
all right, so that's a motion to forward a positive recommendation to the county commissioners and waive the final hearing. I'll go ahead and call the roll. Jim Stainbrook,
Aye.
Ron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
V Owens,
Yes.
Bernie Garitas,
No.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
and Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
That motion passes 8-1.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for this new business portion of the meeting. And I'd like to move on to reports from the acting planning director, Ms. Tammy Behrman, and the county attorney, Mr. Schilling.
Planning does not have any reports at this time.
That's
Nor
great.
does legal.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I have a
Motion to,
Oh,
I
sorry.
have a question, I'm sorry. So on the performance bonds, do we normally approve performance bonds at the plan commission level? I'm going back to that first petition. We normally vote on the performance bond,
The release.
the release of it.
As we interpret the ordinance right now, yes, we will be bringing those to the plan commission.
We've done it.
But not as regular
I have not.
business, right?
Not super often, but I seem to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, we just
Okay.
don't get it very often.
Yeah.
So I-
Okay, I'm just asking. I didn't know, so I had to ask. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Veritas. So is there a motion to adjourn as much as?
I move that it's dinner time.
Is there any objection? Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.